So one of the reasons that new media and independent media has spiked in popularity is honestly not necessarily because we're so good at our jobs. It's because mainstream media is just so terrible at their jobs. Now, what you're going to see here is, I think, a really, really good example of this, because this is a question that has been posed to Bernie Sanders roughly 900 times. Everybody knows that that's the case, but they're going to ask this question anyway. Why is Jorge Ramos going to ask the question that you're about to see? Because it's like a push poll. You know what push polls are? They frame it in a way where they're actually, doesn't even matter what your answer is, they're just planting an idea in your head. That's what this is. It's a push question. It's like, let me just throw it out there and plant this seed in everybody's mind so you go, oh, he must be out of bounds because look at what they said about him. So here's the question. Jorge Ramos is going to, basically ask Bernie, hey, how are you any different from, this authoritarian communist leader whose country is collapsing? By the way, at least in part because of U.S. sanctions too, but don't bring that up. But how are you any different from this guy who, it's widely agreed upon in the West is totally evil? Are you different from this massively evil person?
Senator Sanders, one country where many immigrants are arriving from is Venezuela. A recent UN fact-finding mission found that thousands have been disappeared, tortured, and killed by government forces in Venezuela. You admit that Venezuela does not have free elections, but still you refuse to call Nicolás Maduro un dictador, a dictator. Can you explain why, and what are the main differences between your kind of socialism and the one being imposed in Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua?
Well, first of all, let me be very clear. Anybody who does what Maduro does is a vicious tyrant. What we need now is international and regional cooperation for free elections in Venezuela so that the people of that country can create their own future. In terms of democratic socialism, to equate what goes on in Venezuela with what I believe is extremely unfair. I'll tell you what I believe in terms of democratic socialism. I agree with what goes on in Canada and in Scandinavia, guaranteeing health care to all people as a human right. I believe that the United States should not be the only major country on earth not to provide paid family and medical leave. I believe that every worker in this country deserves a living wage and that we expand the trade union movement. I happen to believe also that what, to me, democratic socialism means is we deal with an issue we do not discuss enough, Jorge, not in the media and not in Congress. You got 3 people in America owning more wealth than the bottom half of this country. You got a handful of billionaires controlling what goes on in Wall Street, the insurance companies, and in the media. Maybe, just maybe, what we should be doing is creating an economy that works for all of us, not 1%. That's my understanding of democratic socialism.
Great answer by Bernie. That's obvious. He really knocked it out of the park there. It was basically the perfect answer, okay? But this is so frustrating because differentiating between standard social democracy and authoritarian communism, that's not even politics 101. That's like before you even get into politics 101. This is like the most basic ideological difference imaginable. I mean, this is like, it's like asking Bernie Sanders, hey man, how are you different from, how is a liberal different from a conservative? How is a fascist different from a communist? How's a libertarian different from whatever, fill in the blank, socialist? This is so basic. It's so basic. By the way, ask actual communists, Marxists, what they think of Bernie Sanders' ideology. They'll be the first to tell you. No, he's a social democrat. He's significantly to the right of us. They'll tell you that. They'll tell you immediately. Now, many of them still support him because he's the furthest left option in the race. But this is like so incredibly basic. And, you know, you can maybe explore this question, but explore it in a value-neutral way, which isn't a massively loaded question, which isn't smearing up front. So you could ask, hey, what's the difference between social democracy and communism? And let them go off. But no, they had to throw in Maduro there. So, and they've done this before with other fill in the blank, with people who are widely regarded as abysmal, terrible, authoritarian leaders in the West, and they've compared Bernie to those people. And it's just incredibly frustrating because the whole idea is just plant that seed in people's minds. It's not even like, he might give a perfect answer, but the trick was in the framing of the question up front. That's what we just saw right there. So it's just incredibly annoying. So just to give one example, we don't need to go into too many details here, but and just for the record, there are people on the left who are pissed at Bernie for that answer because they're like, he was actually too hard on Maduro there. He didn't bring up the sanctions, the U.S. sanctions, which are obliterating the country, and you have to bring up the sanctions in any conversation about Venezuela. So there are people on the left who are pissed about his answer there, just for the record. But so Maduro has done authoritarian controls of the media. Now, many people who are pro-Maduro might argue, hey man, there's a war being waged against him, so that's necessary. I don't agree with that. I believe as a matter of principle in a free press, but to conflate somebody who does that with Bernie Sanders is insanity. Bernie Sanders obviously believes in the First Amendment. He obviously believes in a free press. Anytime he criticizes the media, it's because they do a bad job, not because he's saying, I want to use government controls to try to force you to do X, Y, or Z. So it's just an insane, thing to compare him with. Also, the idea that Bernie is potentially in favor of going totally post-capitalist, that's just factually untrue. There are many things he wants to say, we shouldn't leave this to the private market, or we could have some stuff in the private market but regulate it. But he's not totally post-capitalist. In no way, shape, or form is he in favor of that. You're telling me Bernie Sanders would want to nationalize, the car industry? You want to nationalize the fucking couch industry, furniture industry, whatever it might be, video games? No! Bernie is a milquetoast, FDR-style social democrat, and everybody who's remotely educated in politics and honest about politics will tell you that. But they have to, you and Maduro, hey, riff on that, Bernie. Oh, God damn it. I hate it. I hate it so much. And you saw him smiling at the beginning. That's one of those smiles of like, I can't believe I'm getting this bullshit again. I can't believe I'm getting it again. But he did. He got it again. Wonderful answer. Terrible question. And yet again, this is why people are fleeing traditional media and coming to new media and independent media like this outlet, because we're honest. We're upfront. And, even when I have a bias, I'll tell you I have a bias. I'll tell you what I think about the issue. These guys pretend like they're not biased and they're objective, and then they go and ask the most loaded, dumb question in human history to the furthest left candidate. And that was the point. The point was to smear up front. The point was to conflate them. Just get Maduro and Bernie in the same sentence. That's the whole point. So incredibly embarrassing, incredibly stupid. They should be ashamed of themselves. And unfortunately, I do expect a lot more of this to happen in the future.